In the top right, as the red Terran, he is Vindicta, Alpha X.
Can I also just say how much Alpha X has shown up in this season? We have 6 players out of 16 that are just all on Alpha X in these group stages. That's actually pretty crazy.
That's pretty sick. They have an eye for up-and-coming talent, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, 2 of those players also like extremely favored players right now in the NA area with Future and Estrella. So definitely got an eye out for some very strong talents. But Vindicta also definitely one of those names that's worth watching out for. You were talking about this, like he does sometimes have a bit of trouble, it feels like, closing out games, and he does get drawn into those long series oftentimes, which I think can be a bit dangerous versus a player like Silky.
Right, yes. It's kind of dangerous in general. You get drawn into a super long game versus Zerg, and unless you could be playing a game like Hero Marine was against a Laser, where it's like kind of in your favor regardless. Like you got the momentum and you're controlling the game still, you're keeping the creep spread back. But it's very easy to basically get to a point and be like, well, nothing's really working, so let's like calm down for a second. And in that, you know, it feels like a second, but it's actually longer. Suddenly the creep spreads everywhere, and they have 30 mutas, and they have Hive Tech ready to go, transition into with 5,000 in the bank. And the Terran player can either try and just do continued pushing and dropping, or we go back to that phase, that moment in time where they actually go into Ghosts, which isn't really so popular anymore, but it is becoming more popular as Lurkers become more popular, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's an option against Lurkers, and that's what we saw for was Vindicta versus Namshar, right?
Yeah. I think Vindicta and Ghost just typically happens a little bit more often than a lot of other Terran players, it feels like a lot of the time. Yeah.
I like some. I don't know, man.
Well, can't say I disagree with his assessment of being good with them. Regardless, we're going to have Reaper controlling, just picking off whatever it can, the usual sort of shebang for an early game TVZ. But Everdream is one of those maps that I do feel like I don't know if you'll agree with me on this. This is just the way I've always felt about it. Like, there's something about the map that just makes it feel more claustrophobic. I don't actually think the rush distance is that much shorter on this map, especially with maps like Submarine in the map pool. And I think just like all of the areas feel a little bit smaller. It feels like there's just less breathing room, starting with a natural.
You're right about that. It's not that small of a map. It just feels like a small map because I'm going to guess the reason is the dimensions of the actual map. So when we talk about rush distance, we're talking about like natural to natural with a worker. But when we say like the size of the map, what it feels like, we're usually talking about more of like a left to right situation. Like when we look at the mini map, how enclosed do we feel? How many bases are there as well? Since there's usually not just 5 bases like right next to each other. So you're right, it feels like a smaller map, but we know that realistically anything nowadays, StarCraft 2 certainly has a lot of flexibility to get into 5-6 bases. We're not talking about Scrap Station.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ling makes his way into the main base. Nice scout out to see Tech Labs on the barracks. The starport has no add-ons and is likely going to be making either a Liberator or a Medevac here. But Hellions did manage to move in, roast and toast a drone or 2.
Not much.
Set back off, yeah.
Silky goes for a defensive Baneling Nest. So this would protect him against any, you know, surprise Hellbat attack, which is like, it kind of comes and goes depending on how often that technically 3-base muta, but very fast 3-base muta comes out. Like it's a nice counter to that, but then the 3-base muta thing kind of falls off and so on and so forth. But getting such a great scout, I mean, he doesn't really need to keep the Baneling Nest. We don't really cancel that either just because of that. But it looks like he might be going into still a faster Spire since I don't see any evolution chambers, but not one of the faster ones you can get. And that's something that Vindicta needs to figure out. Is it going to be upgrades or pretty quick Spire?
Yeah, I know that Silky has really been enjoying a lot of the Spire and Muta play, so that's not too big of a surprise to me. But man, I have to say, Vindicta's had a lot of opportunities to just actually dive in with the Hellions because the Lings have been pretty far back or not in high numbers. And right now we see a Queen actually getting roasted and toasted. I wonder if that's actually going to set alarm bells off for Vindicta. He feels like, I can actually move in, but here comes a surround from the Lings, moving in from both sides at the natural and also the 3rd base. But all the Lings get roasted, and now it's just Queens left over. Drones have to split off, but Hellions just move over to the main base and look to see they can find some damage over there.
That is the power of the 8 Hellions. 8 versus 6 is a surprising amount. of extra damage when you compare it with those Lings. Because I think Silky actually was feeling a little bit confident. Either he felt confident and then realized, oh no, I made a mistake, or he just wasn't paying attention. And I doubt he wasn't paying attention for that long. He did lose a queen, which is obviously a mistake, but he should have been paying attention after that. So I think he was kind of like, okay, I'll trap the Hellions. It won't be as bad, but he underestimated how much 8 Hellions can do, especially when the queens aren't there with the Lings. You know, getting those extra couple of shots, making it so only 2 Hellions get into the main instead of 4. So that was not a great moment for Silky, but it actually could have been so much worse. 13 drones go down, 24 Lings, a single queen. But, I mean, there was all the Hellions now gone. No Hellbat support. And it's going to be a bit of a brief moment where the Medivacs and the Marines here probably should not end the game at any point, right? So Silky will be able to get more on the map when his mutas pop out.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the Spire now finishing on up, the Marines are going to have a small window where they're hitting, where the Medivacs are not going to get immediately chased down by anything. And actually, Silky does not have that much gas available because he started up +1/+1, started up Baneling speed. So even with the Spire finished, you see that, well, Silky is actually supply block, first problem. But even the second problem is there's only about 400 to 500 gas right now. So there's not that many mutas that can even be made immediately. These Marines should be pretty safe. A couple of them do get picked off and miss the pickup there.
Silky is certainly doing a like middle of the road build. Generally, when we watch the European series, it really is either faster 1-1, much later mutas, or much faster mutas and much later 1-1, right? Like, but it's kind of an in-between build, and part of that is the awkwardness of not dealing with the Hellions. And I want to say part of it is just like he's feeling a little bit more uncertain. You know, even the Baneliness that came down faster than it shoulda, woulda, coulda, kind of hit his economy a little bit. So it's not like the super clean game from the start from Silky. Vindicta is playing a pretty clean game. You know, diving with the 8 Hellions, definitely a usual tactic nowadays, and just smoothly into a 3rd CC. And with a 2nd factory on the way, I think we can cross off the option of going for an 8 racks all in.
Yeah. 2 Widowmines managed to burrow in between that choke point over there, forcing Silky back, but Silky's got creep spread to work with over here. And even as the scan gets thrown down, not actually going to be able to kill off any creep tumors or push further forward. So I think that Silky's going to feel pretty good about the fact that he just deflected the push from that angle. There is the bottom side angle that Vindicta is now moving on through, and not a whole lot of defenses there. Widowmine gets a good connection, kills a muta, softens up the rest, but I think he might actually need those mutas back at home to help push back the Medivac soon, and he's going to start pulling them back now.
Yeah, the mutas might not help that much against, you know, obviously the Marines, right? But they can help chase down the Medivacs, stop him from going for a drop in the main, or ideally even pick off the Widowmines, although with 8 mutas, it's a bit questionable.
Yeah,
let it shoot first. So it does feel like Vindicta is in a better place, but worth noting that Silky has kind of caught up with those upgrades. Vindicta's 2-2 wasn't the fastest it could have been. And that Silky had already invested into an infestation pit. So he is now 1 step closer to getting to Hive. I say that, but I actually don't like it. I actually think that infestation pit was way too eager. I don't think he's going to get the Hive anytime soon.
Yeah, especially with the fact that Vindicta has done little bits of light aggression and poking and prodding with like a fairly substantial number of Marines, but he's never really committed just yet. And usually that is all just leading up to the big push. So it's going to be a bit before Silky can actually get up to a Hive safely and get up anything of value with those Hive tech units. So we'll have to see. When does Vindicta feel comfortable pushing out? I mean, then 160 supplies, continuing to poke and prod, but hasn't really committed to anything just yet.
In like 30 seconds, I want to say. Like as Q2 finishes and as his Derek adds tech labs to him. That maybe we see the big hole push. Yeah. And that'll be something that can be difficult for Silky to defend, but his best feature right now, as he actually gets a hit on the Marines, is that his creep spread's still it's doing pretty okay. And his mutas are finally getting a chance on the other side of the map, although Vindicta has really set up a nice defense against them.
Yeah. Silky's not taking too much damage against the Marine drops and everything, and managed to pick that up. Loses another muta over there, engaging versus the Marines, which are about to get 2-2 now, like you were saying. And we're gonna end up seeing Silky pulling back to help deal with this final medevac drop, I think. And at that point, like, now is around the time that Vindicta, like you said, should be thinking about doing that move out if he wants to, at 2-2. Okay, starting to see the move out now. There it is.
Yeah, but it's actually not even, I don't know how powerful that is. I think it was supposed to be also maxing out, but because he just took like, he was dropping, so he's taking a bit of trades here and there. It's not as powerful as it could be. Still pretty good if he's paying attention to it. Wouldn't mind do have drilling claws. So he is paying attention well enough there, but a lot of them just got popped, and Silky, he really wants to take this engagement.
Man, Silky was doing a really nice move over there. He's trying to friendly fire the Widow Mines onto the Marines, running the Zerglings further forward. Now the Muta is actually magic boxing on top of the Thor. They snipe that off, and that's most of the firepower there, right? Balins come rolling on in. They bust through a supply depot wall and the bunker, and then they force a liftoff on that base. But Silky's actually in a really, really nice spot here. The timing for Vindicta to actually move out, it feels just completely gone. I'm actually amazed he took such good fights off of creep like that.
I'm pretty sure Vindicta's amazed too. First, he's like, wait, this is off of creep, and then second, he's like, why are there also 20 Banelings on the left side? This doesn't feel that fair. But unfortunately, that is the case. Like, his arm supply is not necessarily bad, but he's got to always be... The engagements are still kind of awkward, I would say, for Vindicta. Like, one of the last things it feels like it is really perfected from any Terran. You know, when we start talking about the best Terrans in the world, it's because their engagements are going a lot better. They always seem to have those Widow Mines always perfectly played, as opposed to hitting themselves or getting bopped by Banelings to too far forward, right? Vindicta needs to just have a better engagement. It's going to be more and more difficult, though. Like, he's really lost control of the map. The creep spread has now gone way too out of control. And Silky has managed to get to Hive very safely. So he's going to be moving on to Ultras, and Vindicta was a little bit late to adding on his tech labs. In fact, he still hasn't added on 3 tech labs.
Oh,
he
man.
finally gets around to it.
The Widow Mine production has actually been a little bit crazy here from Vindicta. He's lost 20 Widow Mines so far this game. He's still making 3 more at a time. But Silky's been doing a really good job. Like, even though he takes a couple of hits here and there from the Mutas, he like loses 1 Muta at a time to those Widow Mines. He has been killing off a majority of them at the same time. So, okay, losing a lot of Mutas to the Marines. That's the beginning of something there for Vindicta. I'm not sure if it's enough though, because look at the mass swell of Zerglings once again shutting down this base.
Vindicta's going to be able to save it, and a good save on the Thor as well. He's going to be up to 5 bases, but his 5th is literally about to be covered in creep. Another
oh my god,
creep
supply block now.
forward. Yeah, the supply block because of the supply depots. At least he got something on the other side of the map, but it won't last very long. And Silky just responds immediately. And when Silky does, I guess, pull the trigger, even if you take a bad engagement, he could always just remax on Ultras.
And, you know, he's just going to go ahead and alleviate a little bit of that supply block by killing off a couple of SCVs here. And just, like you said, there's the Remax, which actually I'm laughing really hard right now because I literally saw Silky in one of the Discords for the North American players watching the European games yesterday and was like, I can't believe such and such player made Ultras. You're just going to throw the game if you make Ultras. And now here he is making the Ultras. Well, let's see if Silky lives up to his own memes there.
This was maybe a bit of a better setup for Vindicta, but his fly, there you go. He's a bit of a
but he's also breaking down the natural expansion, sniping off the armory, pulling the entire army back, and he has so much creep spread to work with. Zombie Vindicta basically has to win against 2 armies of Silky almost in order to make his way to an actual hatchery.
Well, that's frustrating. Thanks for putting it that way.
You're welcome.
That is really frustrating. Vindicta is, you know, probably at that place right now where he's like, this is going to be impossible, but at least maybe I have an army that's pretty close to maxed out, and maybe that can win. But I can almost guarantee that experience has taught him that even if he does the push, he knows he's not going to win with it. It's just so difficult to do when you have so many scans you have to wait for to actually clear up that creep. And then at any point, the maxed out Zerg could be setting up a surround on you. Like, this is supposed to be a map that actually could maybe sway back into Vindicta's favor because, you know, from 5th base to 5th base, not that long of a rush distance. But even with that, Vindicta can't make it through that middle portion, through the rocks. He's constantly stuck at home.
Yeah. He's finally just going to go for a big drop while the Mutas are kind of out of position, but the Banelings roll in. The Mutas are actually all starting to go down. Yeah, that is funny enough. Like, basically the only anti-air here, but I don't think that Silky cares. He just rolls in. Ultras and Banelings going to knock out a planetary on the low ground. Ultras just going to retreat back as more Banelings come rolling on forward. And the Mutas are still just going ham because guess what? As the entire army moves forward to deal with the main force of Silky, well, the Mutas just get to ravage the natural. And now It is basically Vindicta trying to win the game with 2 medevacs and a drop.
His main push might look scary being 20 supply up, but it's a lot more about positioning. Can the Banelings get taken up by the Widow Mines? I don't know about that. There was one Widow Mine that got a pretty good hit, but does not look like 90 army supply. GG.
Silky going up 1-0 in Zombie Grip at this point. I'm gonna say I think Silky 2-0s, but that's my that was the prediction I was giving very convolutedly earlier on. No, really nice job. It just actually felt like outside of the Hellion harassment that happened at the very beginning, which, like you even said, was not necessarily game ending or anything, as we clearly saw. It was good damage, but it was a bit of a trade there. Besides that moment, I felt like Silky was actually in firm control of the game.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, I was trying to say, like, Silky didn't exactly have the best opener with the Hellions included and kind of the awkwardness of his upgrades versus meter timing. But I don't think Vindicta was able to apply enough pressure. Like, we're at that point, right, where Vindicta's really good, like really good. But when we compare him to Hero Marine, what usually happens when Hero Marine pushes out and then doesn't quite win? We go back to his army, and it's like he's got another army, and he's just ready to go. And we'd have to like really get into the replays and analyze when they're skipping production on the Marines or on their SCVs or not dropping mules immediately and stuff like that to show the differences of macro. But honestly, the problem right now might be just a little bit of that macro. Vindicta doesn't have enough units to feel confident constantly pushing out to take advantages against Zerg. And that's gonna, it's gonna lead him into games like that where it's like, well, he's not exactly dead, is he? And then it's just actually a slow death.
Yeah, whenever I think about Vindicta in like peak form, I'm usually thinking about like maxed out army supplies. Vindicta doesn't have to worry about doing a bunch of these macro cycles and everything behind everything. He's just worried about taking more bases and pushing forward, cleaning up creep, and just finding little trades to make here and there. But when it's that kind of situation where they're never really fully maxed out, or at least Vindicta wasn't for a majority of the game, and it's just those kind of back and forth trades where Silky is getting run bys and this counter damage done, I feel like that is not usually where I see Vindicta at his strongest. So I think Silky is finding his groove right now. It's going to be pretty difficult for Vindicta to stop him, but we'll see. Submarine's going to be the next map. It is the actual claustrophobic map. Like, not, it doesn't feel claustrophobic, it is claustrophobic.
Yeah, it's a good like 6 seconds faster in the rush distance than any other map, something like that. So it is definitely the smallest map we've had in, I don't know if it's been a while, but there's always that one short map, and Submarine's been a staple one for this map pool is just not being chosen that often because it's so scary, usually for the Zergs. But because it's small, momentum can sometimes just be the real decider. Like, oh, I think I can get the momentum, I think I can carry it. And I guess that's what Silky's thinking. Submarine might be scary for most Zergs, but apparently not this guy. In the bottom right, as the blue Zerg, he is Silky.
Repping up Psystorm for a while, but up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, we have the red Terran player from Team Alpha X Esports. It is Vindicta.
You kind of saw in the Cyril game, right, that it seems like it's so scary, like these pushes happen faster, and it's usually the Terran doing the push. But if you clean it up, then the Terran actually is the one that starts to feel more like they're being contained. On a small map, they feel like they can't get some breathing room. They can't get a dropout because it's just automatically seen by whatever else is out there. But we can't take away the idea that Azure could be aggressive. In Silky, I don't paint him as a cheesy player. He did try and, lane bailing bust down mechanic. He's gonna go for a pool first. That very well could be because he fears a 2 racks based on the map and that he's up 1-0.
Yeah, like to put this into perspective, there are players like Bly who will play a macro game so that you're respecting the fact he could play a macro game instead of cheesing. With Silky, it's the other way around. It's the more normal way. He'll mix in a cheese so that you respect he could cheese when he's usually going to play a macro game.
Yeah. Well, 6 lings could still be a bother, even though it's not much else here. It wasn't like right into that gas.
And as a Terran player?
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, as a Terran player on a map that's smaller, do you actually feel better or worse about, well, I guess it's probably not going to matter because the SCV gets to scat out. I was going to ask if you feel better or worse about the map being smaller with early pool openings because your Reaper, if it was out of position, could pull back faster. And I guess the Lings also get there faster.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you know, it's a kind of makes up for each other, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
No, it's uncomfortable. Like, if you don't get the SCV scout and the Lings come, the scariest thing is that your Reaper alone can't tell if it's going to be a Roach follow-up. So the SCV scout just makes a whole lot of sense. Like, so much, even if you know your opponent's not going to do it. It's way too scary not to. But Vindicta keeps his Reaper at home. He still wants to see if there are roaches on the way. He's got to check through the middle to see at least that. If there was a roach, he might be able to see it and respond. And he's going to see not much. He's actually just going to see a third hatch, in fact, which is more so what he was, guessing, I assume, that Silky would do. So Vindicta went for a Liberator last game. Very light harassment is still bothering you at that starport. I wonder if he does the exact same thing with 8 Hellions. Or if he does something, I kind of want to do something different. You know, I wouldn't have even minded a third CC on this map because, again, Silky might be assumed to be a macro player. Or even a Hellbit attack, which, I don't know, in other regions, I'd be like, Hellbit attacks are too, I don't know, they're not working out very well. Like, I don't know, I feel like it could work in Silky. Doing the exact same thing? Let's see.
Okay, well, Silky is definitely a player who very angrily remembers when he loses to something silly or if he takes a lot of damage. So is he gonna actually? Yeah, there's the armory.
Yeah. I was wondering about his lack of tech lab on that barracks. Yeah. I like this even though it might not work. I mean, that's the thing though, right? That's just the thing. It sometimes doesn't work. Silky did go for a defensive Bailey Nest last game that he ended up needing. So I guess that'd be one reason not to do it. But I'm not sure if Vindicta ever saw that timing. He got his Hellions in the natural, so he saw the Bailey Nest, that's for sure.
Do you think that Silky not seeing a tech lab on the barracks is going to be enough information? Well, he's going to actually scout the armory in a second, so never mind. Irrelevant question now.
Yeah, it is kind of an irrelevant question now, but it might have been a bit of a tell. The attack doesn't have to be super committed. If it really is going to fail, if you see 6 Banlings are already prepared, I don't think actually committing to it's going to work out. But he could maybe do something against these queens, maybe a good split, just to get the ball kind of rolling in his favor. One queen is left alone, so might as well grab that.
I really like how spread out all these units are, though. Like, the queens are actually doing a really, really nice job of just not taking a lot of damage from the Hellbats, and it really feels like Vindicta's not making anything happen here.
No, he's not. That was a good spread. This Hellbat attacks haven't really worked, it feels like, in a long time. Just because as long as they have any inkling it's on the way, they can spread out their queens, they can kind of get the attack started, they can get the defense started with the queens by moving out and then retreating. Well, in this case, there's also Banlings, of course. But I still like the idea, and I like that he pulls back enough to have 4 Hellions to try and drop now. I basically want Vindicta to have something out on the map all the time, because I think that is actually something he's good with, right? Like, multitasking, harassment, try and make it work, try and get those leads before the mid-game.
That one Hellion on that high ground pillar is actually so cute, even though it's literally not going to do anything. It's a cute idea that did not pan out.
I'm not sure that was on purpose that time.
I think it was, because the idea was the Lings couldn't attack it, but the Queens just wasn't actually contributing to the fight very much.
Yeah, the Queens were there, so.
Yeah.
Oh well. The attack doesn't work out. Silky had already defended it even without, honestly, the help of the Banelings. But I like something being mixed up there. Maybe next time it's battle cruisers, or maybe, hell, you could even gone for like a 2-1-1 that was actually the Hellbat attack. I think that would have been a cool change up too. Perhaps I'm being too pessimistic. Perhaps I'm just painting Vindicta's mid and late game as a failure, just way ahead of time. Because of last game.
Zombie Grove. It's gonna be hard to have it next time right now, because I actually want to note something we didn't talk about as much, but we did take a look at those group standings. Vindicta is 1-3 right now. He has only defeated Cuddle Bear so far. He's lost to M Canning, Namshar, and Neeb. So this is a really important match for Vindicta to have a shot to move out of this group, because he's currently sitting in 6th place and pretty solidly over there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's going to be really tough. He'd have to win this and then continue on a bit of a win streak. Yeah, that puts a lot of pressure on him, and maybe nerves are still a factor. He's played in a decent number of formats at this point, but still not a whole lot, not super high pressure. Queen goes down. decent start to the drop. I love the Spore repositioning in the main, but I love this Liberator even. No! Okay.
Okay. Denying the gas now, yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was going to do that every single time.
I love how invulnerable units are that are in a gas geyser. It's like a literal nuclear explosion can go off, but if you're in the gas geyser when it happens, it's like the old movie telling of you sitting in a refrigerator when a nuclear explosion goes off. It's like, oh, and I'm fine now.
You know, it does make sense that anything protecting the gas geyser would be like really safe, right? Because you don't want it to be like a fragile structure that collapses and then causes a humongous explosion.
That's true. What if gas geysers, when they die, they actually cause an AoE around them?
I mean, actually realistic.
Oh, man. Blizzard, are you listening? No, I'm just kidding. Muta Harass would be a little bit ridiculous then. We do have Widowmine Drilling Claws coming on out. So Vindicta got a lot of Widowmines that previous game. Was able to get some okay connections there. Not quite on the big Baneling connections he was probably looking for. Muta's looking for a kill on that. Medevac is going to actually be able to find one. Maybe finds the second one over here. Mutas are taking a bit of damage, but the Banelings, I mean, they at least buy time for the Mutas. A lot of them end up dying, though.
It doesn't quite get that second tank either. This map's so interesting. You know, that was off of creep, so Vindicta should have felt confident, although it got a bit sketchy there. And then this map has so many chokes that it can be really scary for Silky to do those aggressive attacks like that. They can also be scary because those chokes also mean that it's hard to always scout where exactly the Zerg army is. Like, they might be filtering through chokes, but they're filtering through 3 chokes and surrounding you, so it's still kind of dangerous. You gotta be careful.
Oh my god, if this gas geyser explodes, all those Marines would have died.
I'm actually I don't know why it reminded me of this, but do you remember collapsible rocks, the ones that actually like kill anything underneath it?
I actually missed that. I always thought it would have been really cool if there were like, I don't know how you would even implement this, but basically collapsible rocks only your opponent could destroy. So if you took a base, the collapsible rocks would be over the mineral line, so you could literally you couldn't like just clear them out in advance. Only your opponent could destroy them, and if they destroyed them, it'd just fall on the mineral line and kill all the workers there.
It's a rock made of each race's babies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, kill your own babies. No, I don't know how else you would do that.
Yeah. 2-2 is getting closer and closer to finishing up over here. Vindicta not going to have the +1, I think, armor upgrade that is, for his mech army. So, like he did for the timed out with his 2-2 in the last game, but Vindicta didn't end up actually successfully imploring the 2-2 timing push in that last game. I wonder if he's even going to bother trying it this game when there are so many mutas that are just going to be keeping him at home.
He still could, but yeah, it really depends on if... I feel like it depends on if these mutas either take out large groups of SCVs or if the Zerg army is aggressive and starts finding Vindicta as he pushes out again. Like, I think he could try and do a 2-2 push, but he's just got to be careful basically from start to finish. He has to be careful of Silky jumping on him.
Yeah, and it's scary too when, even on a small map like Submarine, which we keep saying it's a small map, but look at how far the creep spread is. It's actually a bit ridiculous. He's at the front door right now of Vindicta, shutting down a 4th base, and he can just easily retreat back to that creep. And that is what's scary. There's also a run by over at the top base. Balins come rolling on in. They don't manage to kill any workers, but they soften up that orbital, which lifts off in time. There's also some drops happening over back on the other side of the map. Silky gonna have to deal with Marines. Finally, Marine's gonna be a much better choice there than the Hellion from the earlier portion of the game.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Liberator also has been made to help out with harassment. It does go down, but it helps out a little. This just can't be taken out by anything but the mutas, but they are finally here. 15 drones in total have gone down because a Liberator was up on that 3rd or 4th base, and it's hard to spot. I barely spot it on the minimap. That's actually a ton of damage done. Very nice there, because that's more importantly than even the drones continuing to go down. It has opened up a pathway for Vindicta. Silky's army was no longer just constantly looking to jump on him. Finally, some creep spread gets to be cleaned up, and he can actually approach this angle that can be hard for a Zerg to break, but only if he's prepared. All right, yeah, he's paying attention. There's so much happening that it's like, really, the attention here is what I'm constantly worried about for both parties.
Yeah, I think this is going to be such a critical moment. The last 60 seconds was a massive combo breaker from Vindicta, and he just needs to be able to implore his own combo now here to shut Silky down. He's looking for an opportunity does manage to snipe off a couple of those banelings after losing a few Marines here, but this creep spread is still just going to slow him down. I feel like that is one of the biggest problems right now, even though he is clearing up a lot of the pathway there. This is buying time. So the mutas you were talking about, they have to both be home to defend and also they want to harass. Well, they're going to have an opportunity to harass, and as long as they survive, oh my god, those Widow Mines, as long as they survive, they can still come back home in time to defend.
That is some very weak mutas. Imagine a Thor coming by right now.
Oh!
The medevac drop not being paid attention to is not lifted. A Widow Mine drop manages to try and get some more workers, but Vindicta is still down by 15. His 4 base is not necessarily mining that reliably. And this army, it's been here from the beginning. It's actually just like the remnants of his army. I don't think it's actually big enough. Like, as soon as Silky collects his army together, mutas included, Vindicta's army falls.
Yeah. 3-3 just finished up, so that is going to be one small advantage that Vindicta has going for him. Going to right-click down the hatchery. The Zerglings are here. The Bailey's a little bit further behind. Not going to wait around, though, expecting the mutas are returning. There's a lot of Widow Mines to fall back to here. I'm going to say, like, there is still a miracle opportunity here for some big Baneling connections on the from the Widow Mines or even the Mute of Cloud.
That is kind of a tough army to beat. Like, it's not that large, but 3 Thors definitely make sure the mutas can't take out the Widow Mines. And that many Widow Mines, well, Vindicta would have to, I guess, it'd be very unfortunate with Widow Mines friendly firing to actually break that. It might happen. Silky is finally trying to break it at least a little, collects the Thors, which kind of a big deal, actually. All those Thors dying, there's too far forward.
Baneling's looking for connections. They're not going to be able to find it. Reinforcements get there in time. Oh, Baneling connections. Sorry, the Widow Mine connections on the Banelings is pretty gosh darn good, but now there are no more Widow Mines left over. There's 2 Widow Mines that reinforced at the last second, and looks like Vindicta might be able to pick up a kill on that base.
Yeah. Kind of unfortunate that Silky is prepared to defend. Oh, jeez. Oh, God. Everything's going down. It's unfortunate that he was ready to defend when Vindicta had just reinforced, but it looks like with the Banelings hitting 15 SCVs at the end of the day, yeah, Silky can just abandon that base. He lost a good chunk of army, so this is still a scary time for him. But with 4 other bases still mining, he'll be able to replenish faster.
Yeah, and now the army is no longer in position to snipe off a base or try and harass Silky that he has to respect. Because there's still enough creep spread actually going to his other bases. It's an awkward angle to try and push in from, because what are you going to do? Try and go to the natural, the main, and really commit yourself there? There's no escape from that point. You're going to get surrounded. So now the mutas actually have a little bit more free reign to move around, but I think a couple of them did get sniped off there. And now this base, this is the awkward base of the game, all right?
It really is. Like, I think there's a little bit of, I hope he doesn't have the time to pay attention and be taking that base.
Everything's happening on the south side. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. It kind of made sense for the situation, but as soon as Vindicta like pulled back and realized it was up there, that was not supposed to be Silky's base. Let's put it that way. And that is actually one of the bases I referred to as being up and mining. So now it's Silky down to basically 2 base mining, 2.5, kind of. So his Remax did get a little bit of a bank. He's going to use it on Ultras, but it's not a Remax, not very fast at all. That was kind of an important base that just got bopped, even at the sacrifice of some units.
And it's a Remax, and you were talking about also like Ultras and everything going to be made over here for this Remax. He doesn't even have a 3-3. Like 3-3 just got started. He has really been sitting on 2-2 for feels like 6-7 minutes or something. It's probably been shorter than that, but this game has been so action-packed. It feels like time has been flying very, very quickly by with so much happening. Mutas might actually get an opportunity to snag a medevac drop as it's moving out, which would be a really nice pickoff for Silky, because that's the only aggressive force out on the map right now for Vindicta.
Was getting some scouting. Maybe it would have scouted where the next hatchery went. If it had scouted the lack of hatchery, is he going to move towards the top? Like, Silky really should not get away with the 12 o'clock base. Really should.
I guess he has creep spread going all the way there, so that's part of the hope here, is that, like, well, if I take all the fights over here, I know that I'm also, like, as soon as you lose too much, I get to push in on your 3rd base.
That's a very good point. It's like, yeah, there's not much retreating when you try to push to this base and you don't actually push it and you retreat to your 3rd. It's not going to take very long for Zerg to catch up. Does get a quick cancel with a double drop that might even be able to continue on. No, it's going to retreat back as Silky moves in for an actual victory push. Third, maybe a little overeager. Gets a couple of SCVs. Vindicta also has, I guess, the remnants of a drop with 2 Marauders. You know, you can't get that there.
No, probably not. Adrenal Glands is finished up, so those Lings are definitely packing a bit more of a wallop with that Hive Tech. And with +3 armor finished up, now these Ultras are finally going to be able to stand the test of battle a lot more easily. These Lings, shutting down, I feel like this base down here in the bottom left is going to be really important for Silky. If he wants to make sure Vindicta cannot just draw this out. Widowmine's getting some really good connections there. Not actually that many Banelings left over with this army, but the Mutas going for a right click on that command center. I don't think they're going to get a chance to get it. They're going to back off.
I gotta say, Vindicta's Widowmines have been like so much better, not just because they've been getting really better hits, but it feels like they're like actually usually in the right position at the right time, as opposed to being retreated back upon or barely burrowing in time. And he's still producing them too, which is really critical. He's gonna be up to 15 Widowmines as this is a short map. It's going into a very long game. Vindicta is at a very solid army supply, about 10 above his opponents. He just added 3 Ultras and 3 Mutas. This command center being very, very low against 3-3 Cracklings here. That could be an absolute concern. But I'm actually glad Silky has stopped taking that 12 o'clock base. He's going to move it right back to the bottom left. He should get creep spread over there too while he's at it.
Yeah, I love that little Ling run by that Silky also managed to do right in front of the army. It's not actually expected to get a lot of damage, but it pulled Vindicta's entire army back. And now that's actually enabling him to have a lot more control. Banelings rolling into the SCVs, managed to get connections there, even killing off a Widowmine or 2 in the mix. Ultras are going to be a bit expensive to lose, but I would say killing off the base and a lot of workers, question mark, probably worth it. I think he's going to have the time to remake it.
It is a bit of a question mark. Like, we're still at a point, especially on a small map, where investing army to trade up for economy could eventually lead you to lose against the bigger army. You know, the old depth problem. I might have killed 20 drones, but, you know, I have no army now. That could still happen, but Silky has a lot of room to play with. Just if he ends up having to evacuate again, like, that could still lead on the game, as Silky is denied a base and now more mining on the third. Vindicta's going to be looking for a very good trade here to actually continue on in this game. I'm terrified for both these players. Like one Widowmine or, you know, Lings getting the stop on the army microing could determine the game. They just feel so close.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. But I think that the difference I would put here with, I guess this orbital is being reestablished, and Silky did lose the bottom center yet again during that last push-in. But I feel like Silky doesn't have to take fights off of creep right now. I feel like Vindicta is the one that has to do something, because if both these players just get up another base, I feel like Silky's probably going to be a little bit happier with it. He's been building up a bit more of a gas bank, and he can remake these units. Vindicta, I feel like, is going to have a hard time replenishing this army. So many Widowmites just burrowed all next to each other, and Silky is going to respect the hell out of it. Yeah,
I mean, it's so tempting to try and get some Banelings over there, but they were just a little too far away. You're right about it, by the way. Like, the Ling run bys are going to be more potent than what Vindicta can do. Like, you can't really defend these bases, you know? Even when they were planetaries, they didn't have building armor or high-sec auto tracking. It looks like he's actually forgotten Roger Slowham for most of this game as well, which could have honestly helped in some of these engagements. Silky is trying to actually get that full hug that he would like while also doing the run bys. He's being denied the hug so far, but his run bys are actually still keeping Vindicta down. Vindicta's still in that situation where it's like one army, can it win?
Yeah, and actually I want to note that Silky took the top center base again, or he's taking that right now. So even though it cancels his bottom center base, he's, like you said, continuously doing these Ling run bys, these Baneling run bys, and I think he's actually gotten more creep spread up there. He's been able to shut down a lot of the mining that's happening over at that third base location for Vindicta. I do think that it is just about Silky only really losing a lot of these fights when he's committing off of creep, and he's basically just trying to buy some space. And I think it's still sort of been working, but I actually feel like if it ever really needs to, he can just fall back to creep.
Yeah, Widowmine's gonna get some pretty nice shots. Okay shots, and going back into the choke. I think you might be right.
Like, stemmed up right now, though.
The best bet is for Silky to take a defensive fight, but it looks like an offensive one isn't going so bad either. The Widowmine count has really been spread out and reduced. He's down to 7 as opposed to the 15 I mentioned earlier, and it's been in so many places. It's been against Ling run bys and Muta run bys, as well as the main army, and it was a slow death